All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to start with strategy, and then we're going to drive it into details. And I made lots of notes here, and we'll get everything covered from your questions. But I like to look at this from a bigger picture, because I feel like if you can't put it on one piece of paper, then it's not real. It's too complex. So I ultimately like to say this is the problem we're solving right here, is we've got a headquarter facility, we've got Hyper-V and VMware, we've got a disco 1970s person, this is you, and this could be on-prem, it could be in a co-location facility, but ultimately it's using some virtualized resources, flavor of the month, who cares, okay? Now, so we've got, as I mentioned, data center, HQ, colo, doesn't matter. But as you read this from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, this is the scope of what we're being asked about constantly these days. We've got assets in interaction with Office 365. Several of you have mentioned 365 security, how we do 365 security with Teams and Skype and OneDrive and the like. And then we've got AWS and Azure. So we've got these big public clouds that we have to figure out what to do with in an environment anyway, day to day. And now we've got the added issue that now majority of your user population could be working from home. So that's another one. Then we've got shadow IT. So many of you have probably locked down or think you've locked down shadow IT. Okay, well, do we want to? Do we want to be the Department of Yes? And if that's the case, and we want to enable that, how do we govern data, proprietary data that's moving in and out of essentially file systems that have been burped into existence because IT wasn't moving quickly enough with the business? So can we secure it? And pay attention here to these little keys. Those are cloud app security opportunities, and they're API-based security. API-based security is a method of securing a public infrastructure. It's a method of securing the cloud. And so pay attention to that just keep that in the back of your mind, APIs and how that works, okay? And so that's shadow IT. And then we've got identity. So, this is a big deal these days. Microsoft has dominated identity, continues to dominate identity. But then we have these other players like Okta, Duo, RSA, and the like. And we have a philosophy about that, because we have some people that want to track the logs. They want to be able to take action when you're in a cloud environment. You get 400 users at home, but then someone logs into China the same time that person in Rockville. That's a geographic impossibility. There's just no way someone can be in China and Rockville at the same time, or within an hour or 10 hours. So where are we layering AI to take action? Like, we don't need their opinion about that. That's a blocking event. And that's where you start to layer in AI and machine learning into your environment in an intelligent way. Okay, so that's an opportunity with identity. And we're going to talk about identity because it's going to force your hand into how you deploy the licensing that you do with Microsoft, how you tap into identity in Azure AD versus just using kind of a sync approach that you may be using right now to get by. So those are some of the conversations that you put into your kind of roadmap of conversations around identity. Identity is a major one for us. It not only drives the log management questions for those that are under governance and compliance, but just how we take action, how we block more and stop, watch less. Okay, block more, watch less. That's our kind of motto for 2020. And then our SaaS apps. So several of you, now we've got people at home, and that's a good thing. But it could be at a conference, it could be anywhere. And they have different applications like Salesforce and Workday and I mean, it just goes on and on, HR applications, et cetera. And then how are we managing those from a cloud application security, from an identity? It forces this conversation in this world is how we're going to manage these applications with our CASB or our CASB type products. And so that is a major consideration for today, and that we're going to be talking about just from a pure enablement, and then how we actually manage it from a SIEM perspective. Like, first of all, do we care? I mean, we have to ask that. If we're not, do we want to know what data is going in and out of these applications? And do we not want to start to build that capability over the next couple of quarters to be able to do that, all right? And then the conversation on the left, this is really the SIEM, threat hunting, SIEMless SIEM. So can I get by with SIEM capabilities, but in a SIEMless without having the log aggregation and the expense of a big log aggregator? Can I still get the SIEM outcome that I'm looking for? So this bucket would be like SOC capabilities. This is your blocking capabilities. So this ultimately is conversations related to Security Operations Center, blocking, take action, and then your log aggregation engine. I have this as an engine because ultimately these logs are feeding an engine that we have to make sense of, or we have to outsource someone to make sense of it, okay? And then we have remediation and response. So a big reason the SIEM vendors and the SIEM as a service is failing or has failed people, and you look, it's funny, I was gonna put the Gartner Magic Quadrant on, and it had like SecureWorks, so it's like the leader. And if you're in our shoes in the industry and you look at how many train wrecks, like we think that they're our best sales force. Because as soon as we walk into SecureWorks, we know people are upset and I'm unhappy because they're not doing anything. They're not taking action. They're just watching stuff, and then you're lucky to get a response. So the response and recovery part of this, the triage, I mean, it's the same thing with what's going on now. Just because you're infected doesn't mean you're dying. Just because your system's infected doesn't mean you die. Doesn't mean you know how to fix it. So it's funny the corollary between an infection in a business and an infection in a human being. And so we want to know that we've been infected or that there's been a breach of our rules, but then how do we take action? And that's where Red Zone slots in quite a bit as an adjunct to the team, to your team, is to help you do the response and recovery, because that's challenging. You got to actually get into the system, figure it out, know where to go. And a lot of companies that are scaling really big, like the SecureWorks of the world and the Symantec's, they don't have the talent, they don't have the time to figure out to remote into your network and fix it. Some are starting to, but that's a major reason why a lot of SOC as a service, MSSPs die, is the ability to get into the systems and actually fix the problem and work with your team, not just tell you about it. So this is a big one. It's a big one for today, and we'll make the deck available. Ultimately, I would like you over the next 24 months to really build a roadmap, and we could certainly help with that, but just to understand what you're faced with as a challenge, we think that this is the mid-market is faced with this today. And I put R3 here as response, recovery, and remediation.